Hey, and welcome back to another Deck Tech episode on MTG Alpha. Anthony here, and I'm doing a paper deck tech on Bruvac the Grandiloquent. So this is mono blue mill, and Bruvac is a 3-mana 1/4. If an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill twice that many instead. So very simple, just doubling on your mill triggers. So yeah, I mean, can go over the lands real quick. So I have some lands in here to trigger some landfall abilities from like Hedron Crab and stuff. So Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, Polluted Delta, Field of Ruin, which also can destroy target non-basic land and opponent controls. That this also can help with like Archive Trap, which I'll get to in a bit. So each player searches their library for basic land, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle their library. So Archive Trap is a trap card. It's an instant, and it has them mill 13. You can cast it for free as long as they search their library. Obero, Palace in the Clouds. It's cool. You can like tap it for blue. You can use that blue to return it to your hand, and then play it again as your land for turn. So you can get extra landfall abilities if you don't actually have a land to cast. Castle Vantress, Mystic Sanctuary. This comes in untapped if you control 3 other islands, and then when it enters the battlefield untapped, you can put a instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library. So it's cool to get some of those back. Gemstone Caverns, Shelldock Isle. It's a hideaway land, so it comes in tapped. You look at the top 4 of your library. You can get any card face down, and then you can like pay blue, tap it, and then cast it without paying its mana cost as long as there's a library with 20 or fewer cards in it. War Room for card draw, pay 3, pay life equal to your the number of colors in your commander's identity. So blue, 1. So pay 3, pay 1 life, and then draw a card, because card draw is good. Speaking of which, cycling, you can discard this and draw a card, or you have a tapped land. No maximum hand size for all the cards we're drawing. Ipnu Rivulet, so taps for colorless. You can pay life to tap it for blue. You can also pay 2 and sacrifice it to have target player mill 4, but that could be doubled, so that could be 8. This is pretty cool. It comes in tapped, and then you basically have to rearrange the top 3 cards. Yeah, 3 cards of your library, and then it taps for blue. Temple the False God, taps for 2 colorless as long as you control 5 or more lands. So a little bit of ramp in blue, and then a whole bunch of basic lands for this mono blue deck. All right, so we got some creatures here. Fate Spinner. So this is really good in mill. It's really good in Bruvac because, this deck, you're milling people. You're not really going like wide with creatures. You're not dealing damage. So, there needs to be ways to prevent your opponents from attacking you. And yeah, when you're vulnerable. So Fate Spinner is a 3-mana 1/2. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they choose draw step, main phase, or combat phase, and they skip each instance of that chosen step or phase that turn. So they might say, I'll skip my draw phase because I want a main phase and I want a combat. Or they skip their combat phase more often than not. And so they want to just draw cards. They want to do things on their turn. And then we get spared on combat while we can mill people, which is great. Selhoff Occultist is basically like a Blood Artist with mill. So whenever this creature or another creature dies, any creature on the battlefield, target player mills 1. So then that can be doubled, and lots of creatures dying in a 4-person game, board wipes and all that. It could be, multiple triggers, multiple instances of milling too. So that's fun. Manic Scribe, it's pretty good. It's really good in like modern. It's like a lot better in modern, running 4 of these and stuff. Self-milling with Mesmeric Orb. But, I still got it in here. It's a 2-mana 0/3. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent mills 3. And then it has Delirium at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, that player puts the top 3 cards of their library into the graveyard. So as long as you have 4 or more card types in your graveyard, so instant, sorcery, creature, artifact, land, something like that, which isn't too hard to do, then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they'll mill 3. So that's cool. All right, so Sakashima. Really, really, really cool card. I love this card. So 4 mana, 3/1. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any other creature you control, except it has Sakashima's other abilities, which is the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. So usually, if you copy something like your commander, a legendary creature, or if you copy any legendary permanent, when there's 2 on the battlefield at the same time, you need to choose which one to sacrifice because you can't have more than one legendary permanent that is an exact copy on the battlefield, for those of you who don't know. So Sakashima, though, gets around that. This can enter as a copy of Bruvac, which would double the doubling triggers. So we're doubling mill, quadrupling mill. And so that's cool. Another thing that does that, Spark Double. Look at that. So Spark Double enters battlefield as a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter if it's a creature, or an additional loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker, and it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. So you get a copy of a legendary permanent without it leaving the battlefield, having to sacrifice it. Jace's Phantasm, fantastic card. 1 blue, a 1/1 flyer, except it's a 5/5 flyer for 1 as long as an opponent has 10 or more cards in their graveyard. Which, this is basically a 1 mana 5/5 flyer. All right, so Riddle Keeper, and I want to say real quick, most people, by the way, with Bruvac, Mono Blue Mill, they do the Persistent Petitioners. They throw like 25, 30 of those in there. That's kind of boring to me. I've been trying to make Mill work for a while. I played it in Modern, and I was playing with like Phoenix, or Phoenix, however you say it, the Dimir God. So I was building like walls, tapping the walls, having people mill equal to the tapped creature's toughness. So, you know, I was really, really happy when Bruvac came out in Jumpstart because it finally made mill playable. You know, I really enjoyed playing it even if I lost. But so anyways, Persistent Petitioners and mill, kind of boring to me. Just too straightforward. So I've done a lot of research trying to make this work, and I found that like something like Riddle Keeper is really great. Basically like a propaganda with mill. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller mills too. That can be doubled, that can be quadrupled, that can be times 8. So this is really cool. Really cool. It's not much of a deterrent like, you know, propaganda is, because they literally would have to pay to. And if they can't afford it, like you can always afford. This is like more of a threat later on when it's like, oh yeah, you know, if I'm going to attack with a few creatures and now it's like I have to mill 4 for each creature. And then if I cast something, like you could win the game with this. I have done it before. Fogbank is like such like a broken card. I still don't really like understand how like undervalued and underappreciated it is, but it's a 2 mana 0/2 defender with flying, and you prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and by it. So you get this out early. We're trying to protect ourselves because we're not really dealing with like creatures or combat, so we're just milling people. This comes out and yeah, you know, they can swing with whatever they want. They swing with their commander as long as it doesn't have like trample or anything. It has flying, so it can get around the other flyers, you know, creatures with evasion. And yeah, no damage dealt to us. Dreamborn Muse, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player mills X, where X is the number of cards in their hand. So, easy. Hedron Crab, this is what I was mentioning earlier with the lands. It's got landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target player mills 3. Again, 3, 6, 12. Very, very easy to do. 24. Solemn Simulacrum. You know, need some card advantage, need some ways to like ramp in a monocolored deck. So when it enters, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped. That can also trigger this landfall ability we have here multiple times in a turn. And when it dies, you draw a card. So it's good to just throw in front of a creature as like a little chump blocker and then draw a card out of it. Ruin Crab, basically Hedron Crab, except each opponent mills 3. So better in this case, at least. Arguably better. Silent Arbiter, another way to prevent opponents from attacking us while we build up our ways to mill them. No more than 1 creature can attack each combat. No more than 1 creature can block. So the only thing that sucks about it is, you play against like Voltron strategy decks or somebody who's just going to swing with their commander. If their commander is trample or flying or something like that, and we don't have like Fog Bank out and they're, 1 creature can still kill us for sure, but it's something. It's at least some sort of preventative. Fleet Swallower, this is a game-winning card right here. Whenever it attacks, target player mills half of their library, rounded up. So what happens when we mill half their library times 2? Doubled? You win. So this can easily win the game. Overwhelm Apprentice is just a simple 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent mills 2, and you get to scry 2. So pretty chill. Undead Alchemist, aka Gary Busey, apparently. I'll never unsee that now. Yeah, so it's if a zombie you control would deal combat damage to a player, instead that player mills that many cards, and whenever a creature card is put into opponent's graveyard from their library, you exile it, and then you get a 2/2 zombie. This, I won the game this was a really, really fun way to win the game. So really there's no other zombies in here. So at the very least, if you can swing with this, then they're going to mill some cards. But as you're milling cards, every creature that enters their battlefield gets exiled, and then you can go wide with some zombies. I've, in a 4-person game, it gets really crazy. I've had like dozens of zombies on the battlefield. I just start throwing those at people, and then now they're milling like 2 or 4 for each zombie. And yeah, very easy to win the game with that. Patient Rebuilding. So these are some of the enchantments in the deck. So as you can tell, that wasn't a whole lot of creatures, but the ones that we have do things that we need them to do. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent mills 3, and then you draw a card for each land that they milled. So card advantage. Frozen Aether, this is another like preventative way for us to kind of like stall out the game. Artifacts, creatures, and lands your opponents control come into play tapped. So that's just to slow them down. Rhystic Study. It's a 3-mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, I may draw a card, or you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. Most of the time they don't. They probably should, but most of the time they don't. So you're drawing a card every time somebody casts a spell. That's more card advantage for you. Search for Iskanta. So when I was playing Standard, I hadn't played Magic in a while, so I jumped into Standard, and everybody was playing this card, all the control players. And I didn't quite understand like why it was so good. And it's just like the simple fact that like knowledge is power, and card advantage is huge. It's huge. Like if you're top decking and you get flooded, or you're just not getting like the right answers to what you need, like it's all about drawing into the answers. So this helps you do that. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. So that's not what you want, then bin it. Also, that'll help Manic Scribe and other things that benefit us from having stuff in the graveyard. If you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, which again, this is easy in this deck, then you can transform it. So I'll show you what that is. When you transform it, you flip it over, and it taps for blue. So some more mana to spend. And it's you could pay 3 to tap and look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land, which this deck is chock full of that, and put it in your hand. So really good. Do activate that on like your opponent's end step, so you know exactly what you're going to draw into. Then you draw an additional card, it would feel like. So yeah, advantage. Propaganda, preventative. Don't want people dealing damage to us. So each turn, each creature cannot attack you unless its controller pays an additional 2 for that creature. Yeah. I mean, they simplified the text. This is from Tempest, but yeah. Creatures your opponent control can't attack unless they pay 2 for each creature, basically. Drown Secrets, whenever you cast a blue spell, which obviously mono blue, target player mills 2. Very good. Whelming Wave. This card's cool. Oh, well, this got mixed up in here. This was supposed to be in the sorceries. Whatever. Okay, so this is one of like the many board wipes in this deck. They're more like interesting board wipes. Return all creatures to their owner's hand except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. So it's like a 4-mana. It's like a Cyclonic Rift basically because, you know, we don't really have any creatures. And it's, you know, it's creatures, not permanents and all that. But yeah, and, you know, that's just how I look at it. It's a 4-mana sorcery. You balance all creatures to their hand. Yeah. And then they get to rebuild their board state. So yeah, back to the enchantments. Psychic Corrosion. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. So we want to draw lots of cards in this. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, they mill 2. So we're making people mill for anything they do. You want to draw a card, you want to attack with a creature, you know, is it your turn, you know, no matter what, you're going to get milled. Really like this card. 3-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. So again, for those of you who don't know, monarch means you get to draw a card on your end step. And then if somebody deals combat damage to you while you're the monarch, they become the monarch. And then it just, you know, gets passed around depending on who's dealing damage to who. At the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2. If you're the monarch, they mill 10 instead. So that could be 10, 20, that could be 40. So it's already good to get them to mill on their upkeep, even if it's just 2 cards. And yeah, milling 10, milling 20, it's crazy. Sphinx Tutelage, an uncommon, which is worth a few bucks. This is from Origins. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills 2. And if they're both non-land cards that share a color, repeat the process. So there's interesting interactions with this in Bruvac since I don't want to like, you know what? I don't even know if I'm going to go there. I've had this come up and I'd have to like look it up again, but basically because it's like, oh, if they're both non-land cards that share a color, repeat the process, but it's if they're like the 2 cards. So I'm pretty sure it works like that. This is a replacement effect. So they're going to be milling 2. If any 2 of the cards, even if it's 4 or 8 or whatever, as long as 2 of them share a color, you repeat the process. Pretty sure that's how it works. Don't quote me on that. It's been a little while since I played this deck. It's been a little while since I played Paper in general. Maybe I'll do like a 1v1 episode with Bruvac. That would be fun. You could also pay 6 to draw a card and discard a card. So more card advantage. Teferi's Tutelage. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, discard a card, and whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills 2. More ways to have people mill while we draw cards. Fray Insanity. At the beginning of each end step, each player mills X, where X is the number of cards that were put into their graveyard this turn. So if we got somebody to mill half their library without Bruvac, and this is out, on the end step, they're going to mill the other half of their library. Did I say each player? At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards. Yeah, so this only works with 1 player, but, you know, start somewhere. Take out, you know, whoever's like the most threatening. This is Opt. I just added in the Japanese alternate art version, so just instant speed, scry 1, draw a card. Cyclonic Rift. So you can pay 2 at instant speed to return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and you can pay 7 for its overload, and then you get to return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. So for 7, you can just bounce the entire other side of the board, and you know, just give you more time to mill. 2 mana, target opponent mill 7. That could be 14. That could be 28. Yeah, little 2 mana. This is basically like the closest thing to oh, am I not gonna remember it now? Oh man, what is it? That Dimir card. Ah man, I forget what it's called. But yeah, it's the closest thing. It's like a blue and a black and mill 10. It's the closest thing to that really. For mono blue. Narset's Reversal. Copy target instant or sorcery. You can return it to its owner's hand and choose new target. So, you know, we can copy Cyclonic Rift and then bounce that back to our hand and have another Cyclonic Rift in our hand if we could afford that too. or anything really, any instant or sorcery. Swan Song, counter target enchantment, instant or sorcery spell, and then they get a 2/2 bird. Pretty good trade-off. 1 mana, target player mills 2, and you get to draw a card, which could have them mill more. Counter spell, I don't have straight up counter spell in here because it's a mill deck, so let's pay 1 more and, counter target spell, they mill 3. And then Polymorphous Jest. Until end of turn, each creature target player controls loses all abilities and becomes a 1/1 frog. So they want to try to swing in and try to win the game real quick. Nope. They're all frogs. I can take 5. I'm not going to be taking 30 or whatever. Archive Trap. So this is what I was talking about earlier. It's a 5 mana instant, but if an opponent searches their library, you can cast this for free. And then target opponent mills 13. Again, double, triple, quadruple, whatever, 13's already a lot. It's, it's better in Modern when you're playing with like 60 cards and there's like probably like 40, 50 cards in their library. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. Thought Collapse is another, counter target spell. They mill 3. Traumatize. So this is a game-winning card here as well. Target player mills half their library rounded down. What was the Fleet Swallower, like rounded up or something? So this one's rounded down. Yeah. So Fleet Swallower is rounded up. Traumatize is rounded down. Either way. Maddening Cacophony, again, with milling half their library. This card, like, they started printing out more cards that made mill like more of like a viable strategy, which I love. Maddening, I was so excited when I saw this card. So this is from Zendikar Rising. 2 mana, each opponent mills 8. So they've been really nice. They've been really generous with mill. Each opponent mills 8 for 2 mana. If it was kicked, so you pay the additional kicker, so you pay 6, and then now each opponent mills half their library. You can easily win in a 4-person game. You have Bruvac out. You have 6 mana. You cast Maddening Cacophony. You win. Now, solve the equation. Pretty cool tutor that just came out in Strixhaven. Search your library for an instant or sorcery, reveal it, put it in your hand. So, what do you think we're looking for? That's right. We're looking for this. I mean, unless we need like a Cyclonic Rift or something, but yeah, that's what we're looking for. Seagate Restoration, might as well put these cards from Zendikar in your deck, especially if you're monocolored. Yeah, it's 7 mana. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. It's good card draw, yeah, but it also it comes in as a land that taps for blue. As long as you can pay 3 life to have it come in untapped as well. It's great. So hey, I don't need this card. I can't afford it, but I do need lands. Might as well have those in there. Mana Drain. Never thought I'd own these cards, but with like Commander Legends, I grabbed a few boxes and got really lucky. Like I didn't pull any like Vampire Tutors, or I don't even know what the other mythics were, but I just kept pulling these. So 2 mana instant, counter target spell at the beginning of your next main phase. Add colorless equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Best case scenario, like you can easily win a 4-person game on like turn 4 with this deck, just because of Mana Drain and some of the other cards that help like ramp and get you to whatever. So Mana Drain is really powerful. Imagine like on turn 2 or 3, you're countering a spell. You're going to get 4 additional mana added to your mana pool, and you could just like, pop off real quick. All right. Getting near the end of the deck here. So, we got Ponder. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put them back in any order. You may shuffle if you didn't like what you saw, and then you can draw a card. All for 1 mana. Twin Cast, copy target instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets for the copy. Yep. Visions of Beyond. Awesome card. Pretty freaking sweet artwork. I love the artwork. I remember this from like, I don't know. I was really young and I was just like, I love it. 1 mana instant, draw a card. If a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, draw 3 cards instead. So, very easy to do. Brainstorm, draw 3. Put 2 from your hand on top of your library in any order. So you're still drawing 3 cards for 1 mana. That's going to trigger some of these other things, making people mill. Then you get to put 2 back in any order. Awesome artwork. Mystical Tutor. 1 mana instant. Search your library for an instant or sorcery. Interrupt is basically an instant. Mana source, I don't even know. But yeah, search your library for an instant or sorcery. Reveal it, put it in your hand. Instant speed, 1 mana. This card's crazy. This is like one of the best tutors. Pongify, 1 mana. So some removal. 1 mana instant, destroy target creature. Can't be regenerated. Its controller creates a 3/3 ape. So I'm going to turn your commander into an ape. Rapid hybridization. I don't know. Hybridization. Sure. Destroy target creature. Can't be controlled. You know, same exact thing, except they get a green frog lizard instead of an ape. So need the removal and removal in blue. Like, these cards are awesome. I kind of like lean more towards like removal and stuff versus like counters. I like to just empty out my hand. I don't like to like play on other people's turns and stuff. That's just like the kind of player that I am. But you know, this is a mono blue deck. I do like mill, however. So, you know, yeah, there are like counter spells in here because I realize like it's kind of like a necessary evil. That's how I look at it. But I really prefer like, you know, these things. I like to deal with things as they enter instead of, you know, countering them. But that's just how I play personally. Disallow counter target spell, activated or triggered ability. So again, like the counter spells that I do find interesting are the ones that just do things other than just counter a spell. All right. Sapphire Medallion, blue spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Yep. Grafdigger's Cage. So since we're milling people, we need some graveyard hate. And there's no like Leyline of the Void in here because this is mono blue and that's a black enchantment. Creature cards in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. So, yeah. Mind Crank, whenever an opponent loses life, they mill that many, which is great. You know, Soul Ring, everybody knows what this is. Mesmeric Orb, 2 mana. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that player mills the top card of their library. So that includes lands. You're going to untap 10 lands. You're going to be milling 10 cards. That includes you as well when you're playing Bruvac, you know, if this is your card on the battlefield. But that's fine. It's totally fine. There's ways we could take advantage of that. Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Griefs to protect our commander or anything else, you know, copies of our commander. Profane Memento. Whenever a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you gain a life. Really good card. Again, when this was Dimir, it had like Crypt Incursion in here. So then you can like, you're gaining life from creatures entering the graveyard and then you're exiling them and getting 3 life for each one. So there was like a lot of life gain in this deck, but still, this is going to help deal with us, you know, losing too early. And 6 mana artifact, you tap it for 5 and target player mills X, where X is the number of cards in their graveyard. So 5 mill, lots. Bone Horde. When it enters the battlefield, you create a black germ and attach it to it, and the creature that you control gets +X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So we can weaponize some of that. Sky Diamond, a little bit of ramp. Comes untapped, taps for blue. Cold Steel Heart, same thing. Choose a color, we choose blue. Comes in tapped, and you can tap it for blue. And then we got 2 Planeswalkers in here. Both Jace, of course. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. So if you really wanted to, you can self-mill. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe once in a while. +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, draw a card, and its -8 is draw 7 cards. If your library has no cards in it, you win the game. I've never really won with that in this, but drawing cards and all that is pretty good. This is really fun, though. 0 mana, target player mills 10. So many times, this is like, all right, I'm going to cast Jace Memory Adept for 5. Bruvac's on the battlefield. I'm going to activate its loyalty ability for 0, and then you're going to mill 20. It's crazy. And then if you want to draw a card, then you can, and target player mills 1 or 2 or whatever. And finally, it's any number of target players, each draw 20 cards, which can also win you the game, but you know, I just activate that 0 ability. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this Deck Tech episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Bruvac the Grandiloquent. Mono blue mill. I love it. Let me know what you guys think. Do you like this deck? What would you add to it? What would you take out? What are some cards that you think I'm missing out on? I'd love to hear Let me know in the comments below. Also, thank you guys so much for all the support. We've like blown past 100 subscribers, so giveaway coming soon. And yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.